This is a reading from a play on New Year's Day 2021 here in Miami, Florida, at the home of Alfie Willingham Sr. and me, his daughter, Gail Willingham. I wrote You Brought Me from a Mighty Long Way about 20 years ago. We've never done it, but we'll be reading scenes where I play Della Bush, which is my grandmother, his mother, and he will be reading the part of him at a younger age as a character in the play. So I'm doing two parts, the storyteller in my voice this way, and then when I do the part of his mother, my grandmother, you will hear the difference in the voice because I think she sounds a little bit higher, and I'm going to change my voice to not be so nasal, but to sound a little like this. My son, Alfie, that's Alphe, was born, my baby child, in 1926 after two girls whose father I had not married. Yes, it happened then too. And in the final analysis, God is still the only one who can straighten it out. Alfie was a joy to me. You could see the fine-looking man he was going to be, having Indian blood, both from my side and his father's side. Doc, Alfie's daddy, and that is D-O-C-K, Willingham, was almost white and had Indian blood on his father's side too. Sometimes I wonder why it seemed the Indians and blacks interrelated so much easier than either Indian and white or black and white. Is it because the same troubles and downtrodden circumstances created among them a more common bond? Anyway, back to my baby. I didn't cut his curly hair until he was 3. And he wore dresses until he was 2. So sometimes people thought he was a girl. He was sure fine enough looking to be. But I made his first pair of pants and shirt myself. Put them on and told him not to wet or mess himself. Sewed a lot of my family's clothes. Hardly anybody knows how to do that anymore. I think our people need to keep up with all the handiwork for their children. But back to that pair of pants and shirt. Al played around there and played around there till I seen him coming with his legs spraddled. He had done poo-pooed in his pants. So I had to take them off and wash them. He didn't have but the one pair. One time, Alfie told me that he didn't know this. So I'm telling you the story. He was a teenage boy when I married my last husband, who was a bootlegger and had a still. But the high sheriff used to supply him with the sugar, 100-pound bags. I used to sell sugar to the neighbors when they ran out. When people would get drunk on that moonshine up around the church, I said to my husband, they just acting so drunk. I could drink a half pint and it wouldn't bother me. He asked, you think you could drink a half pint? Yes, I answered. I'm gonna go get you some. So I drank the half pint, and the last thing I remember that night is sitting in his lap singing. children weren't there that Sunday, so they could never say they seen their mama drunk. Of course, it made me sick, and I couldn't go to work for the white folks the next day. That made me promise the Lord, if you just let me get over this, I won't do it no more. God heard my prayer, and I still had a job with the white folks the day after. After the high sheriff died, they had another high sheriff who knew my husband was a bootlegger, but he didn't have evidence. I think he sent another white man by there one day, and the man asked Al, my son, "Do you know if there's some liquor here?" Al said, "No, but there's some around Lexington if you go to the courthouse." The white man probably said, "Doggone your time." Really, he could just as easily have said, "You dead, boy." Like some of them around that time. In the 30s and 40s, there was still Jim Crow and segregation, but a lot of individuals were standing up in brave and courageous ways against racism. So, here's what my boy did.
Let me tell you about how I stood up against racism and bigotry. When my mother, Della Bush, told you about a baby boy, Alfie, that's me. I know she loved me, and I always felt that my rugged individualism, forceful spirit was first nurtured by her strength and wisdom. Although I stopped school in the 9th grade, I too remember that poem, Mother to Son. My Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. That really, honestly, and absolutely could have been my mother. In 1941, when I was 15 years old, I left Georgia, never really to live there again. My cousin William and Hollis came to visit from Sanford, Florida. Well, I announced how I wanted to go back with them. At first, Mother was against it. I was her baby, and she knew she would out.
The world out there.
She knew the world out there in 1941 was still pretty hard, and especially for young black men. Our country had not yet entered World War II, and Southern rebels abound in Georgia and Florida. Then one day, all of a sudden, she said, yes, I could go. I suppose it was the memory of that day. she and her husband, Mr. Bush, were having words about something. And he was fussing at her in a frightening way. I came from a back room and said, Mr. Bush, I'm just a boy, but I want you to know that I'll be willing to spend my lifetime in jail for my mother. Sometimes it was the pressure from inside the black family as well as the society which helped shape my destiny. I went on into the service not soon after stationed in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, Georgia.
So these things in the play, Daddy, do they sound as if they were really how our family was and how the characters were?
Pretty similar, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty similar.
Yes, I know you were telling me about one instance where you were stationed in Fort Benning, but you corrected that and said Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Correct.
And then you started talking about something that you did in the 7th grade when you all were getting out of the 7th grade in Georgia. What was it?
Oh, I remember the poem that I had to recite when I was coming out of 7th grade, but the only thing I remembered, it was about a page or so long, but the only thing I remembered was the last verses of it. It says, lives of great men all remind us, let us keep our lives sublime. Thus the art and thus return it, footprints on the sand of time.
Yes. And I said, I bet I could find that because that name of the poem was what you recited, Footprints on the Sands of Time. When I went and looked it up, you said it probably was what you had to learn.
Sounds very much like it.
Uh-huh.
Very much like it.
And what did you see when you saw the poem in print?
I remembered exactly the word verbatim that it had there, that what I learned by memory.
Yes.
Lives of great men all remind us, let us keep our lives sublime. Thus the art and thus return it, footprints on the sand of time.
This is actually a poem called Footprints on the Sands of Time by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And I know the teachers during Daddy's time, as well as during my time, had a rich wealth of literature from everybody who had written up until our time in school, where we had to memorize and to know about all kinds of literature, classics, as well as current, modern, up-to-date news. So, this is that section. And we want to say that this year we probably will be doing some more excerpts. Not so many readings from the play, but actual oral history and stories that come to mind. To all of you, I just want to say, have a very, very happy and safe New Year. And Daddy, what do you want to say?
I want to continue the days like it's past and gone with a lot of us, but I want to continue the happy life and energy that you have put into this, and I love you so much as my daughter.
Oh, I love you, Daddy.